Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, folks, back with the Investigative Journal on this Wednesday. What day do we have today? Who cares? They're all the same, aren't they? Just one after the other in America with the same... Oh, today is the day... By the way, Greg Anthony here on the Investigative Journal. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. You can get my show all the time at greganthonysjournal.wordpress.com. I haven't updated it lately because I've been too busy. Okay, so what day is it today? Oh, tonight, President Donald Trump is addressing the nation from the Oval Office. Aren't we lucky? Who cares if you like Trump or not? This game that they're playing with migrants is just incredible. And all you're going to hear tonight is, there's a national emergency, we need a wall, and there's too many people coming into America, and we need to do this, and we're going to keep the government closed until we do this. And on the other side, the Democrats are going to give a rebuttal with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, the designated idiots for the Democratic Party will say a wall is immoral, a wall is 4th century engineering. We're never going to give them a wall, and the government's going to stay closed. Good. Close the whole goddamn thing down. Why don't you? And don't worry, sometimes I do swear. It's not going to kill you. This is not a kid show. And the reason I did that word was because I just said it. I didn't even think about it. And that's probably because of my Chicago upbringing. If you ever lived in Chicago, you'll know what I mean. It's a very, New York has its idiosyncrasies in language. I was there for a while. L.A. And boy, Chicago has it. And it still is with me because that's where I was born. So occasionally you're going to hear a swear word come out. It's not because I want to do that. It just happens. It just comes out of my mouth. I can't stop it. So anyway, I'll repeat. Tonight is the address to the nation, and what a joke this has become. Okay, let me give you my eyewitness feeling of this whole immigration thing, because I live on the border. And more or less, I've been in Mexico lately more than America. Because I live right there. 5 minutes down the 5 in Chula Vista. And so, right now, I'm on the Mexican side of the border. Because I found a real cheap place to rent, so I come down here a lot. And so I cross it all the time. And on those pictures, you're going to see that they're showing people scaling the wall right outside of Tijuana is terrible, but I see it all the time. I don't see these. I see people sitting by. I see that wall all the time, that fence. And I don't know where people go through, but my first reaction is I know what's on the other side, so where do they go from there if a Border Patrol agent isn't there? And it's just sad because all these people are starting to flow into America. And I keep telling them when I see them here in Mexico, I say, what do you want to go there for? I mean, it's not the land of milk and honey anymore. I guess it's better than where you come from. And you want to make some dollars. But anyway, I don't see a national emergency. I see more or less a political issue here that has been going on for decades. There's millions and millions of illegals in America, and there's going to be millions and millions of more whether you put in a wall or not, because the idea, whether you like it or not, is America is not going to be the same in the next 20 or 30 years through mass immigration. And all they're doing right now is getting rid of the last vestiges of middle-class America and bringing in a whole new, labor force. And within 2 or 3 generations, you won't even recognize America. Nope, you will not recognize it. Okay, not a pretty picture, and we can go over everything and how America got into this position. But if there was really an effort on the part of our government to correct this problem, we wouldn't be here to begin with. It isn't. It's the way they are orchestrating the New World Order movement into this country. And tonight, all it is going to be dividing America 50-50. 50% of the people will love what Trump says and hate Schumer and Pelosi, and the other 50% will hate Trump, calling for his impeachment. I've seen this so many times. How many impeachments? We had Clinton. They wanted to, every time a Republican gets in, they want to impeach him before he even, puts his hand on the Bible and swears in. So that's all you hear. And these stupid Hollywood people, I mean, why are we living in a world with these stupid people all the time making comments? Did you watch? Nobody watches those. I wish you don't watch those Golden Globes and Oscars, because it's fine if you just want to be entertained, but they turn it into a political nightmare, and nobody wants to listen to it. Nobody really does. I can go over and over some of the things that they say. What was the recent one? God, it's crazy. Some of the things they say. I don't want to even go over it. But anyway, what we have here is America now in the last stages of what we term a country, the bastion of freedom and liberty, etc., etc. Yesterday I talked a little bit about the Revolutionary War, and that you should go back and, understand how we got to this point. That's a good starting point. And the Vatican Jesuit connection to the formation of our country. And the real reason for us being here right now. The idea was to create this country of liberty, then to get their dirty little mitts into here, the Vatican, by the way, and to reverse it and change it from inside out. And that's what they're doing. And we've given example after example over the years. And the point is, it's not going to change. So, anyway, I just wanted to make a little comment on today being that presidential address. But that's not really what I want to talk about. And I was going to get in depth on the point of the American Revolutionary War today, and how if we look at it from a different angle, not the one we're told in college, not the one we're told in high school, not the one we're told by every one of these goofy pundits that's on TV or on radio, because they don't look deep enough into really what happened. And I'm not saying that a lot of the factual information, about certain things that have happened, the war, the certain battles, all that kind of stuff, isn't semi-accurate. But the real motives and intent and the people behind it, even to the point of not knowing who our real founding fathers are. And when I say fathers, isn't it interesting? Why don't we just call them priests, the founding priests of America? And if you got to that point, and you start looking at why they do the things they do, now all of this kind of makes sense. I look at it sitting on the other side of the border right now, going, where is the problem? The problem is the people instigating these people coming from Central America. And, who's stuck with the problem? Mexico right now. And the people in Tijuana, because they're not getting into America, right? Unless they're jumping over the wall. So the issue is, as always, not the, for sure people are going to sneak over, is if you look at it from the drug cartels, they work together with the CIA. They work together with our government to drug America. They create the problem, and now they're trying. They try to fix it for you, and they come in and they say, "Oh, I'm the one that's going to save the world, the government." You know, and if we shut it down, boy, the people, like I said yesterday, if the whole government shut down, 3 days and people would pull their hair out. You know, they're so tied to the government now. The American system has grown into a monster. The federal government was never meant to be that way. It was meant to, basically allow the states to have most of the authority, but it's completely changed. So anyway, two things I wanted to talk about today the first thing is, and you might think this crazy, but I really believe that if you really take a look at two things, if you look at a movie called The Truman Show, I really love that movie, and I've watched it a couple times, because the powers that be, they always want to tell you, they have to tell you what they're doing, but they do it in such a secretive and esoteric way that they always are watching and go, see, we're going to get the last laugh on these people. But The Truman Show is a good thing to watch, because as you sit and watch people today, they're always looking for, conspiracy theories. And let me make a couple comments on that. There's so many things going on that you start wondering, is everything not the way it seems? And I think most everything has been created for you. It's kind of a fictional world they've created, and you live in it, and we live in it, and we believe it, when in fact there's something completely different. And nothing illustrates that more than, one, if you start thinking in terms of, I got to get away from politics, I got to get away from this stuff, and start thinking in terms of, wow, is it really true what Einstein said about gravity? Is it really true that there's aliens in the world? And how could they be if in the universe, if there is no universe as we know it? And two things you should look at are the moon landing, if you want to get away from politics and things, and see how they really screw with you. Knowing that the moon landing is false. Now we have China saying they're going to go to the moon. So don't you think China is involved in the New World Order? And it's interesting to do a history of the Jesuits in China. They've been there a long, long time, so they got some connections. And they're all over the place. So this New World Order has to be held together by somebody, and I say it's them. And the New World Order has to go kiss the ring of some satanic pope because he's the richest, head of the richest organization in the world. So we have a serious problem that's not ever going to be dealt with. Hell with the wall and migration. I mean, that's just one symptom of what they're doing. I mean, if you start thinking about it, there's so much, your head spins. So I thought what we'd do today is, I don't want to go back to the moon landing, because you can go and, I say, look for a couple videos. A funny thing happened on the way to the moon by Bart Sabrell. He was a longtime guest on my show years ago. That'll give you a good start. And if you really want to go farther, I'm going to play an interview. Now, this guy has been out there leading this movement on the flat earth for a long time now. And his name's Eric Dubai. Some people say he's a government freak working with the government. Others say he's real. I don't really care what he is. But he gives some good information about the flat earth. And it was when I was a novice thinking about, wow, it can't be living, it has to be round. But does it? And then I started saying, if they can do this, they can do just about anything, including kill President Kennedy, Lincoln, and the rest. So are you worried about you? If they want you gone, They'll snap their finger and you're gone. That's the world we live in. Now, let me go to this, and got a few minutes here on this side of the break, and we'll finish it off today. And then we'll get back to some more serious stuff. I really like this idea about delving deeper into the Revolutionary War and really seeing this connection leading up to the Revolutionary War, the Vatican-Jesuit connection, and how it really makes sense when you look at the world today. Okay, this one is really The Lie We Live. It's one of the better flat earth interviews, even though the guy, some people say he's a government agent, other people say no. And they say that about me, so let's listen to what Eric Dubai says.
Sure. Well, just our common sense everyday perception of the earth, it is flat as far as we can tell. It is motionless as far as we can tell. And everything in the sky is revolving around us as far as we can tell. If nobody told us otherwise, we'd logically assume that the earth was flat, motionless, with everything in the sky revolving around us. And you can prove that this is the case as well. For instance, with the horizon, as you rise up, no matter how high you go on the top of Mount Everest, or if you go in a balloon higher and higher, as far as 20 miles up and higher, we've gotten independent balloons have gone up with cameras. The horizon remains flat all the way around and rises to the eye of the camera all the way up. Now, if the Earth were a ball, no matter how big, the horizon is said to be the curvature of the ball. So as you rose up, the horizon would stay where it was, and you'd have to look down if you're in a hot air balloon, down further and further as you rose up, and the horizon would be below you. But in fact, as high as any non-NASA, RASA, or other Freemasonic space agency has ever shown us, as far as any independent camera has ever gone up with an independent rocket or balloon, as far as 20 miles up, totally flat and rises to the eye of the observer. So that's one proof. Of course, you can measure curvature if it actually existed. They say the ball Earth is 25,000 miles in circumference, and using spherical trigonometry, it figures out to 8 inches of curvature per mile squared. The mile is squared, so for 2 miles, it would be 2 times 2, 4 times 8 inches, 32 inches. And for the third mile, it's 3 squared, which is 3 times 3, 9 times 8 is 72. So you're going 8, 32, 72, 128 inches, and so on. And this is the kind of curvature that would exist on a ball, and specifically on a ball 25,000 miles in circumference, as they say it is. So you can check with theodolites and telescopes and different methods, lasers, to see if the Earth actually does have that curvature. And it's been tested over and over again and found to have no curvature whatsoever. So I mean, even if they had the number wrong and it was 100,000 miles in circumference, there would still be calculable, measurable curvature that just isn't there.
What you're seeing here is a mirage.
The only place curvature exists is in NASA photos and videos, and those can be proven to be CGI fakes, and the early ones were literally taken through a round window to make the Earth appear round.
An old reel received by mistake. It contains the raw or unedited footage of the crew of Apollo 11, Michael Collins, Edwin Aldrin Jr., and Neil Armstrong, staging part of their mission for nearly an hour in living color, with exceptionally clear behind-the-scenes audio of conversations discussing the techniques used to achieve a disingenuous picture depicting the Earth at a distance, in order to falsely demonstrate their far journey from it and their ability to survive passing through the Van Allen radiation belts. It cannot be misconstrued that this staging was done for some other reason prior to the mission, for the reel itself is slated and dated July 18th, 19th, and 20th, 1969.
Okay, let me explain this. Dubai is playing apart from the funny thing that happened on the Way to the Moon video done by Bart Sabrell. I had a chance numerous times to interview Bart regarding this, and he did some Freedom of Information Act requests to NASA, and he requested a lot of tapes and different things, many, many hundreds of them. They sent him this one by mistake, and it actually shows how they staged the moon landing in the module. Amazing. And boy, I'll tell you, from that, his interviews with the astronauts after that, he did another video called Astronauts Gone Wild, was amazing. Boy, and you could tell these guys were lying. Interesting. So, we know we didn't go to the moon, but does it go farther? Because NASA, you see what's happening, NASA, it gives you everything, gives the world everything you want to know about the universe, right? And all of their images are computer generated. And it's interesting, just the other day I heard that China was now making a move to go to the moon, just like us. And, China's involved then with this whole New World Order game, because nobody's ever went. Now, when I interviewed Dubai, he was talking about the Van Allen belt, which means he was still under the impression that the world was round and there was a universe, because there really is no Van Allen belt if we subscribe to a flat earth theory. At least I think so. Maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, let's get back to this for a few minutes, and then we'll play it on the other side of the break.
The very days of the mission, when they were said to be approaching and achieving lunar orbit.
And that's it. It's just photo trickery and brainwashing that's got the world thinking that we're on a ball spinning around the sun with a magical force called gravity holding us on the underside of this spinning ball. It's all just brainwashing that we've received. It's pseudoscience accepted as legit science. But real science has confirmed geocentricity in the flat earth for thousands of years. The flat earth was known to ancient cultures all over the world for thousands of years, and it's actually a relatively recent phenomenon that people have been believing we're on a big ball spinning around the sun. Pythagoras first came up with it about 2,500 years ago. He's also often considered the first Freemason, and it didn't go anywhere much from there until 2,000 years later. Copernicus picked up where he left off, another Jesuit Freemason, and he really picked things up, and Kepler and Galileo and Newton, and now Einstein and NASA, Sagan and Neil deGrasse Tyson, all these people, they're all part of this Freemasonic club that is building a pseudo-scientific worldview to indoctrinate the slave class so that we can be propagandized into doing anything. This is basically the biggest thing you could possibly lie about. So the psychopaths who control society are interested in world domination. The best way to brainwash the whole world is to lie to the whole world about what the world is. What is the earth under your feet? What is in the sky above your head? Where did we come from? It's now, this lie has now evolved into a Big Bang evolution, heliocentric spinning ball cosmology, when in reality, we're not a cosmic accidental sneeze, nothingness turned everything. This is quite obviously intelligently designed, this thing we're experiencing here, this life, this universe. I can't believe anyone in their right mind can look me in the eyes with a straight face and say, no man, it's all random. This is all just random. But people do.
Okay, so we'll come back in the second half hour with more of this. And yeah, he did say something good. That is the biggest lie of all. Huh? I always said that. Boy, if we don't know what we're even walking on, what else? And so we can just start naming them one by one. We've done probably most of them on this show that I could think of. But all of the things that we've been told, folks, could be the biggest lie of them all. And then some people say, well, it's not important. I disagree. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app, for all of your mobile devices. Streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, back, boys and girls, for the second half hour, the investigative journal on this flat plane that we live in. We're not moving. We're very still. We're not traveling at 200,000 miles an hour, whirling through space, as they tell us. And before I get back to that, it's interesting. But if you go to one of the great interviews I had in my life was with a guy who passed away, F. Tupper Saucy, and a number of books he wrote called One Miracle on Main Street and Other Rulers of Evil, which we've talked about much on this show. And a few of the major points of research that I've done, I remember speaking to Tupper on the telephone and saying, you know, go after this, look for more. And one of those happened to be, the story about Lorenzo Ricci I talk about in the American Revolution. There's a lot more there. Boy, I wish we could get our teeth into it and get more, because he said he was still, even after the information he put out in Rulers and Evil, still trying to get more. Then he died an untimely death. Not long after I was speaking with him. So anyway, we do have I did 2 or 3 interviews with him, and the only one I can still find is one. You can get it on the internet. But in his introduction, he makes some good points. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt said this: the only people in the world, it seems, who believe in the conspiracy theory of history are those who actually have studied it. Isn't that the truth? And it's getting people to study it, folks. That's tough. People, they believe in certain things, and they won't change their mind. One point, one thing that I did a few shows. I love talking to Christians about their faith, just like I love talking to Buddhists and different people. Where do these belief systems come from? And one of the things I like to chip away at facts about what they do. So I started doing that with Buddha, talking about what was that all about? and give me the best historical data you have. And there's some points in there I always discussed about that always troubled me. And I do the same thing with Jesus. One of the points that always troubled me was Jesus, those years that we know nothing about him. And I always say, well, okay, we know a lot about him when he was the first time he was born, in the stable, supposedly. And then we know a lot about the last year when he was 33 years old. But what the hell happened in between? And I always thought, isn't it weird that the Romans who were very, obsessed with keeping records, their record keeping in court trials and dissidents, Jesus would have been one of the biggest dissidents, next to better than what we do. They kept every single record, and there should be some records about their investigations into this guy, right? And so I did run across a book called the Arco Volume that talked about that, and they said they got information from the Vatican archives that are protected, better than Fort Knox. I tell you, I know that because I lived there in Rome, and I tried to get in there. It's impossible, but this guy in the 1800s said he got in there and got information about the investigators going after Jesus and actually interviewing Mary and Joseph. So, I want to do that maybe tomorrow, and it's called Gamameel's interview. He was an investigator for Rome. His interview with Jesus, or with Mary and Joseph, and some of the, some of the evidence, what he was like as a boy. What did he do for all those years? Where did he go? Could he stay away from the Romans that long? Or did he get divine protection? I don't know. Kind of like, okay, the Romans are after Jesus. He's 12 years old. There he is playing in the town, and then God just says, nope, I'm going to pick him up, make him invisible, and put him over here. I guess God could do that. No? I don't know. Why not? Miracles, miracles. But anyway, I want to get into that because those years trouble me, and everybody seems to always gloss over it. It's not important. Well, maybe it is. For me it would be. It would help my belief system. If I want to believe in that stuff, it would help me. And I'm sure there's other people out there too that think that way. And who lack the deep inner faith that is necessary for a walk into Christianity or a walk into any of these religions. So I'm just talking about it from a more or less a secular point of view. But another thing that interested me was, if you don't believe in the Jesuits, why the hell did Bill Clinton's favorite professor, it's his mentor at Georgetown, of course, a Jesuit university, boldly admit, this was in a 1966 book called Tragedy and Hope, that the multitudes were already under the control of a small but powerful group bent on world domination, and B, that Quigley, Carroll Quigley, that's his name, himself was a part of that group. So I'm sure Clinton's a part of it, okay? And Hillary. Now, isn't that interesting? Now, you're going to get a lot of people out there who are looking for the Bilderbergers, the elite that control. All we're saying on this show is you got to go to the Jesuits and the Vatican, and then you'll get the whole story. Because these guys have been around a long, long time. And these internet conspiracy sites, they are always striving to identify the conspiratorial factions, aren't they? We get these things. The world is run by the Freemasons. No, the Skull and Bones. No, loose secret societies. The CIA gets a lot of attention, along with the Mossad of Israel. And of course the British, a major front runner in the international banking cartel. Now, when the Protocols of Zion was signed was put out in 1906, which purported to be a Jewish plan to take over the world, Jewish writers denied it. charging a Catholic plot to defame Jewry. The Jews. Whose side are you on? You can get so deep into these conspiracies that the suspects start canceling each other out, and it can become very frustrating. So they play the Hegelian dialectic with you, even in these areas. So you got to beware. Now, a little bit of personal information helps, and I get a lot of it because I worked right in this area for a long time. So I can kind of, sniff out a little bit of who these guys are, but I'm never sure. For example, some people say, well, you were friends with Eric Phelps for a long time and had him on your show. And then there's people out there who say he is a Jesuit agent working to lead people down that primrose, the anti-Jesuit conspiracy, but to bring them into a camp of white supremacy because of many statements he makes. I don't know whether he is or not, but there are some glaring things in his research that make you wonder. Well, I guess there's some things in my research that make you wonder. Who knows? But if you go to keep at a number of these things, it starts making a little bit of sense. But it makes no sense to me not looking into the connection between the Vatican and the New World Order. I mean, if you don't do that, and you don't get it out there in the public, if this is not a subject that is put out in the open, we're never going to get anywhere. And when I'm writing that, I'm thinking of Newt Gingrich and his wife, his wife's the ambassador. And if you know Newt Gingrich, he's a Fox News contributor and a friend of the president, and out there always talking the causes of the right and the causes of conservatism. But Newt is a New World Order maniac, just like the rest of them, and his wife is now the ambassador to the Vatican. What a job. I want that job. It's a little town. It's got you're ambassador to a little club in there. And by the way, Democrats, just to have fun today, if they say the wall is immoral. Well, why don't you ask the Vatican? They got the huge wall around their place. Is that immoral? And they're supposedly the holiest people on earth, right? And they got a wall. Then the Democrats, they fund walls in other countries, and that's not immoral, but it's immoral here. It's just going to show you what they're doing. They're playing with you so that you get 50% of the people to not want the wall, 50% to want immigration, and they're going to get their Hegelian dialectic synthesis here in the end, what they want. A mass influx of people in the United States so they can get rid of the middle class. So don't discount the Vatican Jesuits, please. And if people don't get at them in their research, then they're missing the boat. And you got to wonder. The question you ask then is, do they know about it and hiding it, or are they voluntarily ignorant over the subject? Okay, let's get back to the flat earth because I enjoy it. If we've been lied about this, it's the biggest one of all. And boy, do they take great pleasure in it. And if you watch The Truman Show, that movie, it's amazingly telling you what it's really like. And people will think, oh, it's just a fictional show. Watch it. Was it also fictional in The Simpsons 10 years ago or so when they played Donald Trump coming down that staircase? Exactly the way he came down. Remember when he announced his presidency coming down in the Trump Tower? Exactly the way he did it? No. He was selected president a long time ago. Here's Eric Dubai.
Yeah, right. I think you make a lot of great points, man, and I think the curvature argument is pretty damn strong. And I pulled this off your website in the comments section because, to your credit, you spend a lot of time writing thorough answers to questions and responses to critics, and that's where a lot of my questions got answered. And so here's a little more detail about the curvature argument from your site. It seems like lighthouses are one great example. This first one you have is the Isle of Wight Lighthouse in England. It's 180 feet high and can be seen up to 42 miles away, a distance at which modern astronomers say the light should fall 996 feet below the line of sight. Why can you still see it? And then you have several other good examples in the Lighthouse Department, but another one worth mentioning that people be familiar with is the Statue of Liberty. It stands 326 feet above sea level, and on a clear day it can be seen as far as 60 miles away. Now, if the Earth was a globe at the dimensions that they give us, that would put Lady Liberty at an impossible 2,074 feet below the horizon. These examples seem hard to rectify unless there's some obvious answer that I'm missing, but I would say this is a pretty compelling thread of evidence, my man.
Yeah, but the distance at which the light from lighthouses can be seen at sea is just way too far for the Earth to be a ball 25,000 miles in circumference. Another great example is the Notre Dame Antwerp spire, standing 403 feet high from the foot of the tower, with Strasbourg measuring 468 feet above sea level. And so with the aid of a telescope, ships can be seen on the horizon, and captains declare they can see the spire from an amazing 150 miles away. If the Earth were a globe, however, at that distance, the spire should be an entire mile, 5,280 feet below the horizon. So there's a lot of examples like this where you've got a whole mile, say, that the light should be below the horizon. You should not be able to see it. And even light refraction that the naysayers try to bring up can't account for it, as it can only account for 1/12 of whatever the original distance is. So,
okay, I got to make a comment here. If you've listened to my show, that I lived on boats a long time in my life and used to go out to sea, go out on the ocean, and did some of my own experiments with, things like sextants and other things. And using the horizon dimensions that he's talking about, I came to the same conclusion. How could I believe NASA if this is right staring me right in the face here and I'm doing it? And you know what? It's a good thing to do. Like, I remember I did a laser thing once when they were doing, several people were doing laser studies. So I went out, where was it? In Ventura. And there's a place where you can go from one spot to another, and it was about 7 miles. There should have been a curvature. And when I did the laser and had somebody on the other side, they could see the laser. It came right to their feet. It shouldn't be that way if there was a curve. So what I was thinking to myself as I was driving home was, why don't I believe anything that I do? And why would I believe NASA? Are they smarter than me? Or, could I say to them, hey, how come this doesn't work? You're giving me all this stuff, man. That sounds pretty intelligent. I got it, med. I think you're pretty smart the way you talk like this. I don't know anything like you do, but how come this doesn't add up? It's a simple curvature problem you'd learn in math in high school or grade school. Why doesn't it work? And they'll give you some answer that is so convoluted, you start going, man, now I know why these people are smart. Because they really know how to confuse you, and they make no sense. But it's that smart? Apparently people think so, because they will believe them over their own research. I don't anymore. I think they're wrong. I don't think gravity exists. I don't think the world is a planet like they say, spinning around. And you know what? I'm going to believe some of the research I did over those idiots at NASA. Here we go.
So, the light at which lighthouses can be seen at sea, as well as the fact that canals, tunnels, and railroads are never built with curvature in mind whatsoever. That's not necessary. And if there were, then their plans would be off, in fact. I've got quotes in my book from railroad engineers and canal builders saying how it's hard enough for railroads to make curves horizontally, let alone if we were on a ball and railroads would have to be curving up on the ball. And they give examples of different railroads over the earth and how long they are and how much curvature they'd have to be ascending and how it would be so impossible for the trains to be able to go up this curve, because trains are made to be on a level. They just can't operate that way. So there's a lot of proofs like that.
You mentioned Neil deGrasse Tyson, and one compelling thing you have in your documentary is Neil deGrasse Tyson is on TV and he's talking about the shape of the Earth, and he's talking about how they just discovered now that the Earth is more pear-shaped than it is round.
So Earth, throughout its life, even when it formed, it was spinning, and it got a little wider at the equator than it does at the poles. So it's not actually a sphere. It's oblate, and officially it's an oblate spheroid. That's what we call it. But not only that, it's slightly wider below the equator than above the equator.
A little chubbier.
A little chubbier.
Yeah.
Chubby's a good way. It's like pear-shaped.
And I'm thinking, well, we've been seeing pictures of the Earth from space, and it's a perfect circle. So either you don't know what you're talking about, or those pictures aren't real. This is a serious disconnect that's hard to rectify, Neil.
Absolutely, yeah. And they've said that it's a sphere, and then they've said that it's an oblate spheroid flattened at the poles, so it's kind of like smushed. And now, more recently, they're saying it's an oblate spheroid flattened at the poles with a bulge in the south. So it's kind of pear-shaped. So they keep changing it, but you're right, the pictures that they've given us, they show a perfect circle. They don't show any sort of bulge or oblateness as they claim exists. And people say, oh, well, it's just not enough to be seen. But they're claiming it's quite a bit. He said it's the amount of Everest above sea level is how much more oblate it is, supposedly.
Right, you would think that would show up in the pictures. Now, a lot of people's first question is going to be, well, where's the edge? And I was surprised to see how easy that is to rectify, but I'm sure you get that a lot. How do you tell people when they come at you with, well, where's the edge? Why aren't people sailing off the edge or whatever?
So, in the flat Earth model, the North Pole is in the middle, and the Earth is a disk shape, and the Antarctica is all the way around, holding the oceans in. And so it's a fact, if you're at the North Pole and you go south, no matter which, actually it doesn't matter where you are, if you go south, eventually you're going to end up in Antarctica. But on the ball model, it's just a little ice continent underneath the ball. Yet in this model, it's all the way around you, holding the oceans in. As for whether there's an edge beyond the Antarctic ice plateau, this wall that holds everything in is about 100 to 200 feet tall, and once you climb up on the ice wall, it's a plateau of snow that just goes on and on and on. And the public and myself are ignorant at the moment as to whether there is an edge at some point, whether there'd be a barrier, a dome, as many ancient cultures have said there is, or whether it's an infinite flat plane and it's just snow, ice, wind, and darkness forever. So that's still a mystery, how the ice actually terminates. But it is a fact that if you travel south from anywhere on Earth, you will end up at the Antarctic ice wall. The lie is that there's a South Pole, and they've put a ceremonial red and white barbershop pole with a ball Earth on top of it at an arbitrary point along the Antarctic ice. And they even admit that it's not the actual South Pole, and they have this complex model how the North and South Poles on the ball Earth are constantly moving because of the nature of the molten magnetic core of the ball Earth they claim exists. But the real reason is they have guided tours there to the South Pole, and if you took a compass and you stood at their ceremonial pole, you should be able to walk in a circle and north would be in every direction. But of course that wouldn't happen, and so they'd have to answer to all these tourists every year as to why the South Pole clearly isn't the South Pole. And they even admit it, you can see on YouTube, and they give their complex answer as to why it's always moving and you can never really find it. Same with the North Pole. In fact, if you watch North Pole documentaries, they always claim they're at the North Pole, but they're only showing a Garmin with 90 degrees north latitude. They never pull out a compass to actually check if they're at the North Pole. They're just on some ice somewhere, could be anywhere on Earth, and then they're like, 3 feet, 2 feet, 1 feet, we're at the North Pole.
Arriving destination, 15 feet, 12, 10, 2,
North Pole. Top of the world, guys. Top of the world.
It's just some random ice, nothingness. So yeah, it's easy to lie about these things. And these no man's lands, the North Pole and the Antarctica, they don't allow us to independently explore them. So people like Rodney Clough or Jarl Antahoy, independent explorers who've wanted to go to the North Pole and Antarctica without getting government pre-approval and only going with their escorts to the places they want you to go, they've actually been turned around at gunpoint by military vessels not allowing them to go in. Jarl Antahoy's faced jail time and fines for it as well. So they definitely don't want us exploring what is in the middle of the flat Earth and on the edges. They keep us in the middle.
Yeah, I find it really interesting, and the first thing I had thought when I was getting into this is like, well, what about airplanes? People fly from North America to China to Europe, all around the globe, or, the proposed globe, and this is easy to rectify with the model you laid out with the North Pole in the center. When you fly, if you think about the rings on a bullseye, you can fly around it can make it seem like you're going around a ball, but you're really just going around in a circular pattern on a flat plane. And I was like, wow, I never really thought about it like that. And if you look at, well, of course, something we always talk about is hidden in plain sight, symbolisms and corporate logos that they use. And if you look at the UN flag, this is exactly the model you're proposing, and it even has an overlay of like a bullseye pattern that shows you the overlay is exactly how planes would fly around, or how.
Yeah, and that's an interesting part of it, and we will, of course, one day, again, get into flight patterns. Interesting, especially in the Southern Hemisphere. Back tomorrow on The Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.